I feel like all of these are going to start with me fixing my hair because this doesn't mirror the video like I'm used to. Also, hi, I'm wearing glasses today because full transparency, I usually wear contacts and I didn't realize I was out of contacts and I ripped my last contact this morning. So, yeah, we're rocking glasses today because otherwise I can't see. But I'm really excited today because we're going to talk about something. I like teased this. I was going to talk about something different today. And then I like teased this during my one of my implementation labs with the VIP crew in my school community last week. And people were super excited about it. So today we're going to talk about the custom agent that I built for sending out newsletters. So like if you are somebody who you want to send newsletters to the people on your email list and you never do it and you're not doing it because you're lazy, you're just doing it because you forget. There's always more important things. I don't know about you guys, but staring at the blank page when I'm writing a newsletter is so intimidating. Like it's all or nothing. It's like either I have everything I want to say or nothing to say in that moment. And what I'm going to be showing you in the next 15 to 30 minutes is I'm going to show you what I call my Sunday CEO scribe. For those of you that don't know, my email newsletter is called the Sunday CEO Diaries. So I'm going to show you my Sunday CEO scribe because it is the custom agent I built inside of Notion. It is probably my favorite custom agent that I built since custom agents went live in Notion. And what it does is it turns real notes, journaling, meetings, content I've created, etc., into a newsletter draft. We're talking subject line, hook, structure, CTA. And basically what that does for me is it makes it so that I am not starting my newsletters from a blank page. And that is so stinking incredible because I don't think most people struggle with the writing of it, especially with all the AI tools that we have out there nowadays. And I don't know about you, but if you have trouble getting started from the blank page, I always recommend transcription. Just talk and have it turn it into writing, and then you can edit it later. Like the writing and the actual initial creation of it, I think the hard part actually isn't that. I think the hard part is more so the extraction when it comes to writing a newsletter, turning a week and what happened over the course of that week into a clean idea that like makes sense for your people. So that is what we're going to talk about today because what my newsletter assistant does is it pulls from my actual life. If you've ever read one of my newsletters before, it kind of is a peek behind the scenes. I mean, I think that's why the name Sunday CEO Diaries makes so much sense for it because it is quite literally a behind the scenes look of stuff that's happening in my actual life. And that is because my newsletter writer is actually pulling from journals, notes, and it outputs a newsletter with a very ready to go angle. So I'm never starting from zero. So here's what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to show you the instructions for the newsletter. Let me actually pull up my Notion here and we're going to pull up the newsletter assistant. We might even get an opportunity to see like some of this in real time or I'll just show the newsletter that I put out on Sunday. So let me go ahead and share this. And just so I can see the chat, we're going to go ahead and pull this window over to here. Beautiful. Okay, let's do this. So this is my newsletter assistant instruction. So let me actually go into my Sunday CEO scribe. Something I've been doing, which I don't think everybody needs to do when it comes to creating your custom agents in Notion, is I personally haven't been, for the majority of them, I haven't been putting their instructions in the instructions box. I've been linking it to an external place. And part of the reason I've been doing that is because I know I'm going to eventually want to potentially share some of these instructions out with people who are in my school community. Shout out to those of you who are in the VIP tier of my community because you will be getting access to these. So I've been saving the instructions into an external place, but I want to show you the triggers because I have it set up so that yes, it will trigger when the agent is mentioned, but mostly I have it go weekly on Friday morning at 8 a.m. because that is when I write my newsletter so that I can schedule them to go out the following Sunday. I would love to get it so that like they're done on my content day on Wednesday, but given the nature of how I write my newsletter, you're going to kind of see why that doesn't work super well for me. And you can see it has access to a lot of shit. Let's make this I think it should just be can view. Oh, interesting. So it's got access to a lot of stuff here, and you're gonna see why in just a second. So let's pop over to the instructions. So I have that my agent's purpose is to turn recent journal entries, notes, and other captured insight into newsletter readies, ideas, and optional drafts in Ellen's voice. That is its purpose. That is what it is meant to do. And then I gave it kind of an identity and a style. It needs to have very bold, clear, strategic, slightly spicy when appropriate style. And part of the reason for that is because of the rebrand and brand direction that I'm going in, which I'll tell you more about that down here. Tone, confident human. This isn't about content marketing. My newsletter is literally the Sunday CEO Diaries. It is not meant to be like a massive marketing push. There's little like, hey, this is what's happening this week in that weekly newsletter. And then the approach here is I want it to pull very real stories, sharp insights, and I want to shape them in something publishable that is relevant to my audience. Like, and I'll give you an example of the newsletter I set out on Monday. This guy right here, which actually we can change you to published. And actually, I'm going to push you to next Sunday. But the one that I sent out on Sunday had a little bit of a like dating and relationships undertone to it because I'm single. So I had to kind of tone that down because the initial draft of it was very, very much dating oriented. And I was just like, okay, not my entire audience is single. We need to make sure this is applicable to everybody. So that is something that can kind of happen as a result of that. So sometimes I will have to go through a second pass to just tweak it to make it a little bit more relevant to my entire audience. But so that's its purpose, its identity, when to run, which this is mostly covered when you're setting up a custom agent in Notion. The when it runs should mostly be guided by these triggers right here. So it can run when a new chat with the Sunday CEO scribe is activated. That one's always defaulted. It can run when you mention the agent, and then it can run on various other triggers. But again, I have this one set to run Friday morning at 8 a.m. So this is kind of the most important part of the when to run. And then for me in particular, I have it pull from a lot of source material because again, the nature of my newsletter is it's meant to be a very behind the scene, let's turn the things that are happening in my world, in my life with my, recent conversations, let's turn that into a newsletter. That's my approach. So yours might be a little bit different, but it has a default scan window and it looks at the last 7 days. And then again, it says, unless the user gives a different range, maybe I want it to look over the last month. It looks over the last 7 days. And what it's looking at is it's looking at all of these different places. What is this? Page could not be found. Back to my content. I don't know what this was supposed to be. Check for announcements or posts worth bringing into. Oh, I think I know what that was. And I've consolidated that into my content ideas. So we can take that out. So it looks at my journal. It looks at my content ideas. It looks at meetings that I've had from the last 7 days. And it looks at campaigns campaigns are how I keep track of like, am I participating in any summits? Do I have promotional campaigns coming up for my business? Because I want to mention those if they are coming up. But it looks at my daily journal. And if you've seen my daily journal before, it's kind of a variation on my habit tracker. I started just journaling straight inside of my habit tracker. So I'll track my habits here. And then I drop my journal entry right down there. And I personally journal on paper, but then I just dictate it. I just like read it back through after I journal it out and I dictate it into Notion. It looks at the content ideas. So if I've created any new content ideas in the last 7 days that are takes that might be relevant to my audience, it looks at meetings because I use the AI note taker for damn near every meeting that I'm in. And if there was a really good insight that came up with a client, that might make for a good newsletter. And then again, like I said, content or campaign, excuse me. And then when it is choosing angles and language, this is where I really make it sound like me. And this is personally something that I really love about being inside of Notion is I can have all of my documentation inside of Notion as well as have my AI inside of Notion. And I don't need to duplicate that in multiple places. I remember one of the first times I went to use Notebook LM, I felt like it was kind of silly for me to use Notebook LM because I was uploading and downloading all of these resources from Notion that were already in Notion into Notebook LM. It just felt redundant. So I have my guide to my ideal client. I have all of the stuff that I'm implementing for the rebrand. I have my newsletter assistant. So my Sunday CEO Diaries content creator and strategist guide is like all of the important information for this is who the newsletter is for. This is who it speaks to. This is like the general structure of the newsletter. These are good subject lines. All of that guidance is in here. My writing voice, I literally have a document called How Ellen Writes. And then my newsletter voice and format patterns, which again go back to the Sunday CEO diaries. So it's looking at this, it's keeping this audience and this language in mind, and then this is what it's supposed to do. So it's guided to extract from each source a moment, something that happened, something that I noticed, the tension. So, what was the problem, the pattern or belief that got in the way, the reframe, the system, because so much of what I do leans back into systems, and then the language. So, this is its goal. And then if the sources are thin, it either asks for a wider date range or a specific page that I want it to include. And I will say that I've never had this happen because I'm really, really good at like every single day I drop the journal entry in here, and I have meetings every single day that are relevant for it to bring in. So I've actually never had this happen, but it's got that fallback in case it needs it. And then after it does all of that, so it scans my Notion system, it scans those resources for ideas. And then it is told to create 5 to 10 newsletter concepts. And then for each concept, it's supposed to include a working subject line, a hook, a core idea, a structure, suggested structure, and then a CTA. And then if I request it, which I do like 95% of the time, it creates one full draft and preview text, and it puts that full draft into my content ideas. And it's literally instructed, use the Sunday CEO newsletter template. And I've tagged the template right here. When creating a new newsletter page, always use this template. Like I had to tell it that like 3 times. I don't really know why. That might be overkill, but like it kept not using the template. And I was like, no, you're supposed to use this template. And then it fills in the new content and it sets the time for the following Sunday. So this is created on Friday and then it is scheduled for the following Sunday with the default time of 9 a.m. And then only after the page is created, filled, etc., it notifies me. And I'm tagged right here. So the notification goes straight to me. And then I've got a whole bunch of safety checks in here. So no hallucinations, don't invent things, no duplicates. So don't repeat the same angle in multiple concepts. So I'll literally, I have a freshness rule in here because one of the first times I ran this, it basically wrote the exact same newsletter 2 weeks in a row. And I was like, no, we can't have that. So I told it, hey, here's your freshness rule. Before writing, scan the last 7 days of items created and identify what was already shifted or drafted last week. Don't do the same idea twice. And this has actually been working very well. I haven't had duplicate ideas since I implemented this rule. And then if everything is the same topic, it's supposed to pick a different moment. And so I've got guardrails in here. I've got some do's and notes. I've got edge cases, and then it's got its output format, which honestly, I don't even need that because it doesn't need an output format. I've already given it its output format. So these are the directions, and I want to show you some of the stuff that it comes up with. So when I write this, when I use this, let me actually see if I can go to the version history. Yeah. So this was created. Oh, wait, not March 6th. Why are you saying March 6th? Interesting. System nobody's auditing. I'm trying to figure out which one was. Maybe it was March 9th. I'm confused. Oh, I am really far back in March. That's why it's going so far back. I was so confused. Okay, so this was the newsletter that went out on Sunday. So let me show you the version history of this guy. So it created it Friday morning. So you can see it takes about 10 minutes for it to do all of this. The trigger fires at 8 a.m. and it initially created the page at 8:11 a.m. And its initial draft was very, very dating and relationships oriented, which is fine. But that ultimately isn't like, that is not what my newsletter is about. That's not the work I do. It's about, it's just, it went in that direction because I'm dating somebody new. So that's what I've been journaling about a lot recently. And so I gave it a little feedback and I was just like, hey, this is a little like too dating and relationships can we tweak it? So I think we started tweaking it at about 10:30. And so you can kind of see the change in it, but it like gave me some really, really solid starting points. It mentioned so it wrote this entire draft for me. It mentioned some of like the things that were like triggering events for me for last week. It very much wrote like me, and it brought in this notion of overfunctioning, which is a conversation I had, or a journal entry I wrote last week, and it brought that notion in, and that ended up kind of being the jumping off point for this entire newsletter, was that we ended up talking about overfunctioning and how high achievers overfunction in a lot of aspects of their life. And then we ended up having our final draft. So I played around with the subject line, the preview, and then this was the final draft that I dropped into Flowdesk. So all of it gets written in here, and we start like this was my initial draft. And even though I didn't use this initial draft, it gave me that jumping off point, which works so well. Again, I think the biggest thing for so many of us who want to send newsletters out to our people every single week is we just got to get over that like getting started hump. Let me show you the week before too. And this was another one. Again, if we go into the version history, this one was written and started talking about needing a deload week and how to implement deload weeks into your schedule so that you're not constantly pedal to the metal all the time. This was the idea that it came up with, and we ended up going, and I just used that as my jumping off point. And I ended up talking about how calm isn't a red flag. And we still talked about deload weeks. We still talked about how deload weeks make me feel. I just kind of tend to bring a little bit more of my own kind of personality into it and my own background stories into it. I'm trying to find one though that it just like straight up wrote, because there were several that it just straight up wrote for me. Was this one that it straight up wrote? Yeah. This is one that I don't think I hardly had to tweak this at all. I think this was one. Yeah. So it wrote this here, and it talked about waiting for the ideal me. This was all it wrote this entire thing off of my AI guy wrote this entire thing off of like what I had entered that week, and I barely had to tweak it at all. I didn't do anything until the next day, and I didn't send it out until the next day, but I barely had to do any tweaking here. I think the tweaking that I did do is I had to add in like my what's happening this week and then my microsystem of the week that I always add at the end. So like the bulk of the content that particular week, it wrote all of it. And so that's kind of my point with sharing this is I feel like this is such a sticking point for so many of us that we want to send these newsletters, but getting over that hump of having to like start from scratch and staring at the blank page every single week, that is tricky. So now, granted, my setup and my system is incorporating a lot of kind of my larger systems, right? It is incorporating my habit tracker, my journal, my like all of the like brand stuff that I already have in Notion. It doesn't have to start with that. So don't think it has to start with that. If you're building a brand new custom agent, you're newer to Notion, it doesn't have to start with that. You could literally, and this is the cool thing about the custom agents. Here, let me actually show you this in the back end here. You can give custom agents access to certain URLs. So like I could say, here's an allow list of URLs. I could tell this, you can go look at my website if you want to. So that is an allowed URL for it to look like. You can go up here and say you are allowed web access. If you give it blanket web access, it's going to look everywhere. But again, if you just restrict it, I'm going to go ahead and put it up here too. If you restrict it to a particular domain, then it's just going to look at that particular domain. So if you don't have everything loaded into Notion right now, do you have a blog? Do you have a podcast? Do you have like your Instagram or something like your social media that you can give it web access and you can point it to those things to help it generate ideas from the other stuff that you might have put onto the internet that week? So it doesn't have to be, I'm just so Notion centric that that's my default is I just send it to aspects of my Notion systems and have it pull from there. But if that's not you yet, that's fine. Can you send it to your website? Can you have it look at your blog? Can you have it look at your podcast or your LinkedIn page or your Instagram and pull information from that? I think the thing that has been so nice for me is when I'm unmotivated on a Friday and feeling not very creative, this thing gives me that starting point that I can then use as a jumping off point from there. And that is so stinking helpful because everybody says all the time, you got to email your list. You got to email your list. It's so important that you email your list and email them consistently and not just when you're launching things. Like everybody says that all the time. All the email marketing pros say that all the time. but it's like easier said than done, right? That can be a hard hump for a lot of people to get over. And that is what I love about this. I've been consistent with my newsletter for a while, but it always felt like pulling teeth to get the newsletter going. And like I would be writing it at the crack of dawn on Sunday because I forgot, or I'd be writing it late Saturday night because I just couldn't muster the motivation or enthusiasm or find things to write about. And actually, the crazy bonus about this, I'm going to go ahead and share this because I don't think Beth would mind if I did. I did a talk last week where I spoke to I consider us friends at this point in time. She's hired me multiple times. I've spoken to her group multiple times. And she said something really lovely when I was speaking to her group last week about my newsletter, how she absolutely loves my newsletter, and it's one of the few newsletters that she consistently reads every single week. And it was really cool to hear her say that, because I was definitely scared that starting to use this AI agent to initially draft my newsletters was going to backfire on me, that it would lose that personality and it would lose the meanness and that people wouldn't resonate it as much. And honestly, I actually think that it's almost like the me in it has been more honed, because I'm not now mentally responsible with coming up with the hook and the topic and the structure and all of these things. My responsibility becomes, since this AI agent does so much for me, my responsibility becomes then injecting the Ellen into it and injecting the story and the voice and the personality. And I'm almost able to do the things that I should be doing, which is adding that creativity and really making sure it speaks to the people on my email list. I'm able to do that more and better because I have so much more capacity to do it. I'm not like draining my capacity on doing all of those kind of monotonous, just getting the newsletter started things. So that is my microsystem this week. It is probably my favorite custom agent that I've created. It is so helpful. And I definitely, as I think about the custom agents that I want, I have a content agent. I have something that gets my tasks from my meetings. I have a template recommendation concierge when you fill out my Notion inquiry form on my website of what template might be the best template for you. That helps me, scans my website, scans all of the templates that I offer and makes a recommendation. I have a scouting report generator. Which is one of my newer offers that helps me generate my scouting reports and gets that started. I have all of these different agents. And then I have agents that I used to have that I don't actually have anymore, like a morning brief and an end of day brief and stuff like that. And what I like is I've kind of synthesized all of the agents I've tried, and I probably tried about 20 down to about 6. And I've been playing with them. So if you are somebody who is curious about custom agents, this is the time to build and play and see which ones you like and which ones are actually saving you time, saving you mental bandwidth, because and they announced this initially when custom agents came out in a couple like a month ago or whatever it was, a month or two ago. They announced that by May 1st, what they were going to do is they were going to transition to a credit sort of system with the custom agent. So if you had a custom agent that is doing a ton for you, but it's not actually really giving you a lot of payoff, then that might be one that I personally removed some of mine that they were doing a lot. They would have burned through a lot of credits, but they weren't actually giving me that much bang for my buck. So I guess the rambling point I'm trying to make is this is a great time to start playing with custom agents, building custom agents. Use the next just under a month to see which custom agents actually are tremendously beneficial for you, that you love, that take so much off of your plate, even if it's just mentally and emotionally, they take a lot off of your plate, because then once they start charging for credits on May 1st, I think is when it's supposed to happen, then you will know which agents are worth keeping and which ones are worth deleting. That's kind of the stage that I'm at with my AI agents right now, is I'm making that determination of which ones are worth deleting and which ones I want to keep because they've just been helping me so much. So that's kind of all I've got for you today with this whole thing. I hope that was a little peek into, and honestly, you could probably build your own newsletter agent from the walkthrough I gave you. I am totally okay with that. If you need any help building it, and you're not already plugged into my school community, since this is going to be going on YouTube, go ahead and go over coachellen.com/community. It will direct you to the school community. It is free to join. And I've got all sorts of changes happening in there from a Notion support, system support, and beyond that are coming up soon. We also actually are going to be having our first, doing a new workshop series. I call it Third Thursday. So every third Thursday of every month, I'm going to be doing a free workshop inside of my Notion community. And so that is actually going to be all about AI agents on April 16th. So if that is something that would be of interest to you, you actually want to sit down and build one of these AI agents, we very well are probably going to be using our time together to do that. I'm going to poll the community, see what they would be most interested in doing with that time, but I'm super, super excited for it. So third Thursday, it is on April 16th is when the first one is, and we're going to be diving more into these AI agents then. So with that, thank you for those of you who are able to hop on the YouTube live. And for those of you who are watching the replay, if there was anything that I talked about, like the Notion credit stuff, anything I shared that was a little bit confusing, oh, awesome. I would love to have you there. Yes, if anything's confusing and you're watching the replay, feel free to comment down below, or I'm also going to be posting this replay over in the school community. So with that, happy Monday. Thank you guys for being here live. Thank you guys for watching the replay, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.